Welcome to another episode of All Elite Reviewing. I'm Joshua Starnes.
And I'm Shameek and Josh.
And this is the only podcast that touches on every single corner of the All Elite world. Dark, Elevation, Dynamite, all the crossovers into all the different parts of independent wrestling you can possibly imagine. We're going to cover all of it here with All Elite Reviewing. And this week, it's Double or Nothing Fallout Week. So lots of big things happened at Double or Nothing, although we only were about 75% right on a lot of our predictions. Only one title change in the entire show, and it was the only thing that the title change that everyone knew was going to happen going into it. But that doesn't mean that big things didn't happen, and there's a lot of fallout. And the first Fallout show is actually, just from the way things are based now, is Dark Elevation. And I think this week, among others, proved that you really do need to be watching at least Elevation, if not Dark, because storylines start there, storylines travel across the shows there, and it really does make the Dynamite viewing experience better.
Yep, absolutely, yeah.
So should we dive right into it?
Sure. I think the first thing that we had on Elevation is I saw there was a Thunder Rosa promo, right? Which we all knew that there was going to be a Thunder Rosa kind of build, but I mean, they're building, I think, a couple of people right now. But it just can't. And the thing I was thinking about when I saw this, I was like, does Thunder Rosa actually know how to feud with anybody else, or does she just singularly?
I know she hasn't really.
Now that Britt has the title, it makes more sense for her to be focused on her. But it's just kind of plays into the whole thing. It's like, there are other people you can fight, Thunder Rosa. I mean, but it doesn't make much more sense now that Britt's the champion, so that's the target, right? So
but remember her initial feud when she first came into the company, when she's still sort of all known, was with Hikaru Shida for the women's title. But once that was settled and Shida retained, because they were both baby faces, they basically stayed focused on that, and then very quickly moved Baker into a feud so that they could have something for her to do while Shida was working her way through some of her other feuds with Abaddon and Nyla Rose and eventually Tay Conti for the title, knowing that they were going to be waiting quite a while. They wanted Shida to be doing something, knowing they were going to be waiting quite a while before they finally had that Shida Britt Baker match, and this worked out much better for Baker than Big Swole did, and maybe they knew going in, or they suspected, or it surprised everyone just not only just how much Thunder Rosa got over very, very quickly, but how hot the Thunder Rosa Baker feud is and how big that lights out match was going to be. So this is obviously the rematch everyone would want, and putting the title on it just makes it that much sweeter, which also means they're going to make us wait for it for quite a while.
Right, just like how they made us wait for Britt to become champion. I mean, I think they're going to kind of go the same route with leading up to the Lights Out, the sequel, basically. Lights On? I don't know.
Yeah. On average, with one exception, and maybe that'll make that today's episode trivia question. With one exception, champions hold on to their belts for a long time in AEW. They take them seriously. Most of the reigns are at very minimum 6 months. Yeah. Usually closer to a year. So that when a title change does happen,
TNT title probably has the highest turnover rate out of all the belts.
TNT has the highest turnover rate because it has one that was only about 3 weeks.
Is that a turnover rate? It just made sense. I just said it, so yeah.
But you know what the second shortest reign was, and it's not in the TNT title.
Wasn't it not? No, I'm assuming it's a woman, right?
Nope.
Oh, yeah. Whoa, okay. And then I don't know.
I'll give you a hint. There have been fewer women's champions than there have been tag team champions.
So SCU.
It was FCU had it for a long time. FCU had it for almost 5 months. It was FTR. FTR only had it.
Oh, I even forgot
they had it from All Out until Full Gear, and that was it.
That's right.
They had it.
That wasn't that long. I completely forgot.
And everyone knows
it's not like I like FTR. I just completely forgot that they were.
Yeah, because they've been so involved with other things, and they're big enough that they don't necessarily.
And they're like in and out of the rotation, basically, as far as like wrestling matches go. In fact, as far as wrestling matches go, they haven't wrestled in the ring in a while.
They've had like singles matches. They were heavily feuding with Jurassic Express and a big part of pushing Jungle Boy.
Right. They cut off the horns and everything like that. Yeah.
But since then, they've been heavily, hooked up with the Pinnacle. And maybe that's a good place to start too, because this had This also had it didn't have a match. There was a match on Dark, but it did have a big promo from Jungle Boy on that.
Jungle Boy, let me tell you
First
something
big
about Jungle Boy.
focus.
Let's first of all, he's not going to be Ken. He's just not. I don't see a world. I don't think. Eventually
he will be at some point, but not this time.
This match is coming up next week, or I guess this week, really. Right?
It got moved, so it's got to the Saturday show because they didn't want to do it on a Friday. So it's actually not this week, but it's going to be the week after.
Okay,
so this week's getting.
I wasn't aware of that. Yeah, that's good.
So once they knew they were getting moved again, so this week's going to have a Miro TNT Championship match instead.
So with Jungle Boy, regardless that he's probably going to lose to Kenny, and probably meaning definitely going to lose to Kenny. Mm-hmm. But the thing is, you see this week, he's getting so much TV time. I mean, it's like basically they're taking a time to shine a spotlight on a dude. Yeah. And they're like, well, it's Jungle Boy's time to just, give all the promos he can, be in all the matches he can. I mean, he was on every show this week.
Yep.
So,
and he won they really want to put
a push because he's not going to win a title, but it's a push in that sense.
It's a push. I mean, this is how AEW does pushes, though. I mean, we're used to this idea of the WWE push because if somebody loses then they're at once, then that's it, they're done. And AEW doesn't do that. I mean, Darby Allin lost to Cody regularly until he beat him, but there was no denying he was being pushed that entire time. And it's for the same with Jungle. They've always said that they were going to pull the trigger on Jungle Boy when fans were back, and as soon as fans came back,
I mean, he's over. Yeah.
They went right away, right to Casino Battle Royale, which is one of the big pops from Double or Nothing we talked about.
So surprising.
Make sure that he's on, and it should be noted that Dark Elevation this week were actually filmed ahead of last week's Dynamite and Double or Nothing. So in a couple of cases, there are some, like part of Elevation was filmed during the Fan Fest on Saturday. So in a couple of cases,
because it was actually dark instead of being light like it used to be.
So in a couple of cases, they had for some of these dark matches, they had a giant crowd, like a getting ready for nothing crowd, tons of people,
and not just the ringside wrestlers.
No, I mean they were like almost TV level matches. You had so many people just watching, which we haven't had for dark, and had a nice change of pace. Elevation was only 45 minutes this week.
Right? I feel like all the shows are a little shorter. I mean, I kind of feel like this is really how it's supposed to be. I mean, I don't think you're supposed to have 3 hours for each show. I mean, no. That's just kind of crazy. So, especially when you got Rampage on the deck, coming up.
Well, especially because they've been talking about it, but nobody really knows what it's going to be like until next month or really the month after that. When they go back on the road, how are they going to record Dark and how are they going to record Elevation, and are they going to be recording them before and after live shows or the day after and stay in the same place? And are they going to be? Is that going to? Everyone seems to think that's going to affect the length, and we're going to start heading towards hour-long episodes as opposed to the giant long episodes we have had. But it seems like it's going to depend on the venue that they're at. So just be prepared when the Houston show comes around. We may be there for 6 hours or more.
That's fine. we haven't been in live wrestling for so long that I think we could actually use more. So I'm fine with that.
Can't even remember what it was like. So this week, we start right in with a Jungle Boy promo. There's going to be a lot of that. The other big things that were in here was there were 2 big things that started here and went to, and actually didn't even start here. They were continuations of stories that have been across AEW. They've been in a lot of Dark, have been in and out of Dynamite, but kind of came to a head here and led directly into this week's Dynamite. You had the big Dustin Rhodes promo for the Nick Comoroto Bull Rope match, and he's been doing several of these on both Dark and Elevation. So there were a lot of people watching Dynamite this week who were complaining, like, where did this feud come from? They've just had these handful of matches, and then all of a sudden this Bull Rope match. Like, well, it's not all of a sudden. They've been talking about it on episode after episode for weeks. If you're only watching Dynamite, it may seem kind of sudden, but if you've been watching all of it, they have been building to it and building to it and building to it. And Dustin's been talking about it, and QT's been talking about it, and you knew that it was coming.
And I'm just not behind this feud at all. I'm sorry. I know they're doing stuff and they're trying.
Well, you're getting new guys. They're getting screen time for new guys. Nick Comoroto really could use it. Lee Johnson really could use it.
Because we used to win over Cody, but yeah.
So we'll get to it. But I mean, they sort of kind of got one this week, right? Maybe they're doing things backwards, but that's where it is. But so at least these guys are getting screen time, and they're not getting buried. And I don't know if I could see it trying to be a push. Maybe it's not working out exactly how they have it in mind, but we'll get into that, especially when we get to Dynamite and we get
Aaron Solo changed his hair.
And Aaron Solo changed his hair.
That's something. That's a personality. So I guess there you go.
But then also the other big thing is you had Big Swole and Red Velvet versus Nyla Rose and the Bunny, and amazingly, Nyla Rose and the Bunny went over. I mean, with some cheating, and that led directly into a match on Dynamite. And to the point where they actually had to recap part of Elevation on Dynamite this week to show you this is how we got here. This is why we're having a big Red Velvet Bunny match.
I love the Bunny. So
there is a feud here.
Red Velvet Bunny is gonna. I think that's a good feud that I think
so too.
A couple of times.
But that was another one where people were like, where did this come from? Like it didn't come out of nowhere. They've been doing this for a while. I mean, they've got this faction that Red Velvet's part of. Bunny's been, this stuff that's been going on between them and Nyla Rose and
someone's in a faction
partner is. I know. Hey, I love a good faction. People complain about that and they talk about why are they doing this and they're doing too much of that. I've been rewatching my way through all the different WWE pay-per-views that I've never seen from the beginning up to present day. I'm in the middle of the Attitude Era, 1998, what people will call the greatest time for WWE, and it is faction city. It is faction after and that was kind of what made Stone Cold stand out, is he is literally the only person on the show who is not in a faction.
You know how he just exemplifies what you're saying. If you ever played, like WWF No Mercy, or you played WrestleMania 2000, those classic video games, you basically had to choose what stable you were in, right? Yeah. I mean, it was that much ingrained into the whole thing.
It's all stable. So don't tell me like this is like they're overdoing it. No, they're doing it exactly. I mean, to an extent, Tony Khan grew up watching wrestling of the 90s, especially WCW, and that's what informs what he's coming up with. But this is
especially if you're going to write in more if you're going to write in more interference into matches and stuff like that, it's always helped to have somebody come help you or something.
Yeah, that's actually like the one downside. And
can't be dark order all the time.
It's also not new to AEW. I think we want it to be better in AEW in that whenever somebody does have a stable, it seems like someone in the back feels like, well, that has to lead to interference. If you have a stable, you're going to keep your guy from losing. So
like Don Callis is up there, of course he's going to interfere.
Don't do that. Like stable's fine, but don't take the logical leap from stable means we must have more interference in matches. I mean, if that's our choice, we're like, no, everybody on their own so that nobody can interfere, because that's just too much.
And I mean, at least the more screwy finishes that we miss the days of just like clean finishes a lot,
Well, I mean, they still have clean.
Of course they still do, but
they still have they at least have finishes, but it's not like a guy got beat, and a lot of times it's more like a guy got cheated.
Or it's not like Goldberg beat anyone. So
exactly.
Like the booking's not terrible, except for like Cody and Go or that one. But the booking's not bad. The finishes are kind of screwy sometimes, but the booking's usually been solid.
Right. Sometimes stuff gets overbooked and you get a little, and I think the main thing everybody points out, and I parrot, is that individually, none of it's a problem. It's just that when it keeps happening one after, and we noticed this on Double or Nothing, when it keeps happening one after the other, you can't help but notice it. And it just draws attention to itself, which is not what it should be doing. It should feel like organic generation of heat to make you want the feud to continue. And if you were thinking about, oh, they just did this a second ago, you're not getting organic generation of heat. You're thinking about the booking, which is not what you should be doing. Mm-hmm. The other thing, some really good match will blow through. Those are like the main things from Elevation, but because I wanted
to actually touch on some about Elevation that you didn't get on. Two things real quick. One of my favorite guys is Joey Janela.
Yeah.
So Joey Janela had this
slowly breaking
Joey
up
Lebowski promo.
Yeah.
Where I'm like, where he basically came out and acted weird.
Yep.
And I mean, that was his whole promo. He was just really off, and it feels like they're almost revisiting the split from Sunny again, kind of.
There's definitely some
odd promo.
Yeah,
and I think
they're definitely.
But I don't know what to make of it.
They're definitely doing that, and they're definitely doing a split with Sunny. Maybe they're just like their direction is, all right, you're going to split with Sunny. You figure out how it's going to be in the promos, because that's continuing on into this week's Dark Elevation.
Well, one other thing on Elevation I wanted to get into other than that was Jack versus Penta. Jack versus Penta, which
I
actually would prefer Angelico versus Phoenix for the match.
Well, unfortunately, Phoenix they've done that before. It's really good, but Phoenix is injured again from another show.
Really?
And he's supposed to be on the Federación Wrestling pay-per-view in like 5 or 6 days. So
with a robot leg or what?
I hope he heals up. He heals up quick.
But is Jack Evans' new thing like standing in the ring and yelling for like 5 minutes? Because did you notice he did that in a couple of matches this week? And I think it's just like his new thing.
He's done it before.
I guess instead of just breakdancing in the ring, that's his new thing where he just stands there and yells at you. I think he even was yelling in Spanish for a little bit.
He may have been, especially. He and
Angelico, they were in AAA, right?
They were in AAA and they were in Lucha Underground. They've both wrestled. The other guys several. They've wrestled the Lucha Brothers a bunch of times, so there's probably just some long time back and forth there. Yeah. That the thing that I was thinking about that, and during the JD Drake versus Jungle Boy match, you notice Jungle Boy got the main event. He got the main event in.
I mean, it's a common theme.
And in Dark, it's a very common theme. Was that the thing I really like that I think people are really missing if they're not watching the Darks is that is where. You get a lot of the really weird, fun, goofy stuff that is not going to be allowed to be on TV. But if you're not watching, like the Acclaimed is so much, they're really good on Dynamite, but they're so much better on Dark than where they don't have to tone the act down.
Right, exactly.
And like some of the diss raps he has come up with for when he's on Dark are so harsh. They're some of the funniest things I hear all week. They are so bad. And they really, I think this week there was one about TBS and they called out John Cena. It was about the show's eventual move to TBS. A lot of meta and it worked on every level.
Exactly. Ripping on John Cena, using basically John Cena's gimmick from back in the day.
Yes.
It's pretty funny.
It is hilarious. It works on so many levels.
That's surreal, that's it's a hat on a funny hat. So
exactly. And they've even done diss raps about the fact that the stuff he is saying, his rap at that exact moment, he would never be allowed to say on Dynamite.
Right.
And you get the wingmen. It's like occasionally the wingmen show up on Dynamite, but mostly not because they're so
are
goofy.
They the wingmen?
There are two factions. There are two factions that are interrelated. It's like a Venn diagram. So there is Pretty Picture, which is Peter Avalon and Cesar Bononi. But then there's the Wingmen, which is Peter Avalon, Cesar Bononi, and Ryan Nemeth and JD.
So when it's just those two, it's
like
the Inner Circle were basically.
Yeah, something like that.
Sammy, it's just like
that's
that.
Right.
But the whole group was Inner Circle. So
that's right.
Okay, so that's
when it's all of them, it's the Wingmen. And
so
they're best when
it's the name of a tag team.
Is
the name of the name of the state.
Okay. That's right. Exactly. You got it.
Okay.
And it's as the stable that they're the goofiest and they're the funniest. They're too weird to ever be allowed on television.
But JD doesn't wear the funny clothes anymore. He's gone back to like regular wrestling.
I know he's gone back to being the well. He's always that's part of his gimmick is that he was always the least comfortable and he was just kind of doing.
Yeah, but that's why it was funny.
I know. I'm sure at some point they'll get him back into it, or he'll just take it off and what they need to do is have him in the middle of a match just take it off and throw it down and stomp on it and break all the other wingman starts. That would be the best part. A lot of fun.
Okay, so that's the elevation.
Dark was a bigger blast of matches, but not too much so because, and I think the other thing and why it was nice and tidy is because these were actually in front of shows this week, not in front of empty arenas, so they had to sort of get it. They only had like a short period of time to record.
That's right. They couldn't just take all day if they wanted to or anything. They had people had to get home basically. Yeah. So I don't really have that many notes on Dark this week.
No, it's pretty much the same as Elevation. You got some more goofy weirdness with the Wingmen, which was great. Another Jungle Boy main event and a very
TH2 and Chaos Project for some reason teaming up together and then not coming out to TH2's awesome music, which I know. What is Angelico dancing to? I mean, how do you do this? What Chaos Theory does?
And they continued to push Red Velvet. She had a very competitive match with Diamante that she went over on, which makes sense because she's the one pushing. But it makes me feel bad for Diamante that she's kind of 50-50 it. She's been reduced to a space. She's a very good wrestler, but she's been having to spend most of her time on the Dark shows and a lot of that
and losing
putting over some of the new women that are getting.
Well, look at Bear
time on
Bronson.
Dynamite.
He was also.
Well, I think
that's
Bear
another
Bronson.
note,
I
is
think
that
it's just
he's out there
because
to lose all the time now.
Well, I think they've been doing the same thing, a lot of the same thing with Dante Martin too. It's just because he doesn't have his tag team partner. As soon as he does, they will.
Oh, that's a good point. Dante Martin's going through the same thing right now too. Yeah.
But and I wonder if that isn't a side effect of the thing with Max Caster when he was winning a lot of singles matches without his tag team partner, and suddenly he was ranked like number 2, and people were like, "Why is he ranked?" Maybe that made them self-conscious about it. I don't think that's it. I think they just they don't want to put them in the singles pictures, but they want to give them some ring time. But
sure, and plus, I mean, Derek has a lot of legs left as a tag team, so I mean, it's just unfortunate that Boulder got injured so quickly.
Yeah, but it feels weird that there wasn't that long ago that Diamante was actually getting some push of her own. She was winning.
I mean, they were tag team champ when that was a belt. Yeah. She was tag team champ,
and especially in tag team matches, but even in singles matches, she would get on Dynamite here and there. She wouldn't lose very often, and now once Ivelisse got let go, now she's just putting people over. I'm wondering if that's like some dues paying that from being some heat being slightly tarnished by whatever went on with Ivelisse that got her fired. And now she got to pay her dues before she gets back to where she was.
Oh, less than fire story could be that maybe they just don't have a story for her. Until they have a story for her, she's going to lose a bunch of matches.
Yeah, I mean, it's the one thing we do say about AEW is that someone losing a bunch of matches doesn't necessarily mean that they're doomed or that nothing will ever happen with them.
That's what the ranking system comes to play. Just go wrestle in Elevation and Dark all day, and then all of a sudden you're on number 2 for some reason. So there you go.
It usually just means that they don't have a story for you right now. Right. I mean, Joe, sometimes it means that they've been watching and they've been seeing who should get a push and who shouldn't. Like it seems like probably Joey Janela isn't ever going to get to that top event thing that he wanted to. That early on it was like him and MJF and Jungle Boy and Darby Allin.
Yeah, he's on that too.
Have all gone up, and he's not going to be on that too. It's clear he's not going to be on.
I love him though. I love him. I wish he would be. I think he's gotten a lot better since he first started. But you're right.
It's got to because this goes back to even before the pandemic. It's got to be they're just looking at the crowd reactions and going, yeah. I mean, they did everything they could, and it's just not there. No one's reacting that way for him, so it's time to move on.
Right.
And there will still be some guys who will fall into that, but they're not like getting rid of them. It's like, all right, you're gonna have a job in the mid card and do your job in the mid card.
Right, exactly.
That's not a bad place to be. So, which brings us to this week's Dynamite.
Right,
very unusual Dynamite in that it
starts off with the main event. So.
Yeah. Well, it's just that it does, and I think that makes sense just in the sense that it's coming on at 10 o'clock on a Friday night, 11 o'clock Eastern on a Friday night. So it's like
people's attention are at that time.
Yeah, put your big match on front because that's what people are going to see, and then they're gonna leave or they're going to fall asleep before the rest of it. So you got to kind of live through that, but also it's this is the Fallout show from Double or Nothing, and usually their Fallout shows from pay-per-views are big things that have lots of stuff, but because it's been pushed all the way to almost a week after the pay-per-view to the point where nobody can remember what happened by the time that and they start going, oh yeah, that's right, Britt Baker's the new champion, and you've got and it's happening like in the middle of the night where nobody's watching it, so you get none of the Fallout stuff, and it's the right move. They intentionally didn't really put a bunch of.
Put the good stuff when people are watching, right? Why put?
Yeah. There are definitely some things.
No one's going to hear it.
There are definitely some big things. There's the Young Bucks match and the Cody Anthony Gogo QT Marshall match. So things are continuing, but then the rest of it is just a lot of talking.
Well, I think that's the overall theme of this week's show is that things are continuing.
Yeah, that's usually the way it is for them after pay-per-views. They don't
get more detail on that.
Yeah. They just continue. But yeah, it starts with the main event. Starts hot. The Young Bucks versus Pac and Pentagon. It is probably physically impossible for these guys to have a bad match, and
exactly.
And they had
four incredibly talented wrestlers.
It wasn't quite as good as the Young Bucks versus Pac and Phoenix, but it was very, very good.
That's kind of expected. Yeah, it was still a great match, and Pac and Penta still continue to impress. I mean, it's kind of. I think I want to see Pac wrestle more. That's really what it comes down to. even if it's in singles or tags. And when Phoenix is coming back, he's not going to be doing those tags anymore. And when did you? Is there a date that they've announced with Phoenix, or it's just whenever
I
it gets
suspect
better?
it's day to day. I mean, he's got a pay per view. He's supposed to be not for AEW, but for
Right. And when is that?
The 16th. So he's
that's like a week. Yeah,
very soon.
Okay.
So
all right.
Another person we'll be talking about who showed up is going to be on it as well in a big main event spot. We'll talk about that in just a minute. But
because I guess Mox is on the shelf for a little bit, right? So
at least that's the story they're telling. That
right.
That's what comes out of this, because obviously, and people have been expecting this for a while, because in real life his baby is about to be born and he's going to be taking some time off to be a dad at home. And so we're getting attached to that because he took the pin, and not just the pin, but a huge number of knees to the face.
Oh my gosh!
Nothing.
It was like a snuff film.
It
was like Last Passion.
The only one I saw that was worse than that was actually at I think it was at Full Gear with the Chris Jericho and JF versus the Young Bucks match. I think that was at Revolution, and there was a bit where they super kicked MJF like 6 times, and it ended the pin just with like that line.
I felt like a lot more this time with Mox
falling on his face,
and plus
it was pretty bad because he had all that. He had juiced pretty hard, and he had all that blood on his face. So, which also means we get something of and it's something one of the things I like most about AEW does not forget storylines. Nothing goes down the memory hole.
So, are you talking about when Eddie came out
came out to make the save, and they didn't just forget that at one point in the not too distant past, Pentagon was in a faction with him, and they were close friends, and then they broke up.
But then you have people like Scorpio Sky and SCU where they're kind of like, oh, so they're just not together anymore. Like,
it's the thing where if you watch it all,
the only example I can think of like that.
And even then, like they didn't mention a huge amount, but like SCU did mention it on one of the dark shows. They mentioned it in passing, but they did mention it,
right?
And if you only watch Dynamite,
but even when they did that segment this week with Eddie, like coming out to them, my thought was kind of like, we know this, like we know how this works.
It makes
you don't have to say all this stuff.
It makes complete sense, and he didn't like put a thumb on it just in case we're all idiots, but it made sense. He came out because well, I mean, he came out exactly. He came out because he was to get one even for Moxley. And also, Pentagon is still his old friend, and it had that great moment. I know some people crapped on it, but I thought it was hilarious where they went to pull off Pentagon's mask, but he had learned a thing or two from the last couple of Young Bucks matches, and he had another mask under it. He was ready for him this time. I thought that was hilarious.
Fucking deal when they actually did that to him, it was Penta.
They did it to Phoenix. They did it to Penta and Phoenix did each other, but. Remember the last Young Bucks versus the Lucha Brothers match? That's how they won.
That's right. That's how they won.
Nick pulled Phoenix's mask off and kicked him, and Pentagon has learned. He's like, I know what they're gonna get their tricks. And a lot of people say the Young Bucks are best as heels. I don't know if I go quite that far, but they're most entertaining as heels.
I don't like them as all at faces. I think they're kind of bland, and I think they're very spicy as heels. So yeah,
they are. Well, it's when they get to do their most.
Private Party is the opposite. Private Party works so good as faces, but I think they're kind of boring.
Boring as heels, maybe because they've been stuck with the Hardy family office, and it's hard to stand out, especially because Matt Hardy is taking up a lot of bandwidth there, and there's so many people in the Hardy family office now.
I'm already calling this right now.
I know, they're telling me to shut up. You can hear me talking smack about it. But no, I think but you also get the thing where we were talking about all the goofiness is on Dark, and you don't get to see it on the TV, but you really get to see it when the Young Bucks are heels, and that's when all of their best indie instincts,
like old wrestling matches and stuff. They're like,
or they do silly things. They had that great
they'll do a Hogan thing, or they'll do the Shawn Michaels thing, or something like that.
Well, they had that great bit where Matt teased he was going to do a dive out of the ring. Instead, he got out, walked slowly down the stairs, and kind of jogged around the ring.
See, they become more theatrical. They're much more theatrical.
It's hilarious. I know some people think it's a lot of
and dressing like gypsies. That's also great. Like that's
great. I laughed at every minute of that.
I like their stick. I hated them as faces. I like them as heels.
Yeah, no, it was.
I do want them to lose the titles though, but again, I think that's a good test.
Well, I mean, they're going to. It's just a question now of who is it, and I think we talked last week. Now the only people who really make sense are are proud and powerful, especially now that they're faces. That makes a lot of sense as a matchup. So and actually,
so that Mark Henry came out,
yeah,
and I from looking at him, he looks good. By the way, I mean,
he
if not
does.
great, he looks great actually.
The only thing there are two things wrong.
Yeah.
I think he'll get in the ring. I think both he and Butch at some point
at all
are going to get in the ring. I don't know for what, but they're going to do it. And this would have been great, except then they both did really great stuff, but in like the worst possible way. And I don't usually, a lot of like the people talk about AEW sometimes being crash TV, and there are 1,000 things happening at once. And most of the time that doesn't bother me because I can keep track of it all. But this was like too much. Mark Henry's out there for like 2 seconds, and then Vicky Guerrero does her screech, "Excuse me," and then she comes out, and then and all to introduce Andrade, which is a great big giant huge thing. But they should have just let him come out, because stepping on Mark Henry, people
doesn't need that. He's a star already.
Booming on that, and then he doesn't need Vicky Guerrero. He looks like a star. He carries himself like a star. He talks like a star. I don't know. I mean, I assume that they want like they're thinking some sort of connection to the memory of Eddie Guerrero or something like that. But we don't need that.
We don't. Vicky. You're absolutely right. I agree.
Vicky's like the total wrong. She's like a comedic tone. A big star doesn't necessarily need like comedy manager sitting.
I'm assuming they're friends or some shit.
I'm assuming. I'm assuming that he knew Eddie when he was a kid growing up, and from what I've read,
he wanted her to do that.
Lucha Libre guys idolized him, so it probably wasn't like a small thing. But
well, I never really watched NXT, but I know that Andrade, even WWE, because he got called up right to the main roster. But I know that he held a couple of belts there.
Yeah, well, there was a period he was a Heyman guy. I mean, he's a great guy. He was. So he was.
I like the guy.
He was. I mean, he was one of the founders of. He was at CMLL for a long time. He was one of the founders of Los Ingobernables there, which is like.
Oh, I've heard of that. Yeah.
The big him and Roosh and Dragon Lee. So that was like their big faction. It was like and Tetsuya Naito when he was on excursion to CMLL. And then Andrade was in New Japan for a while with Naito, and they brought Los Ingobernables there. And so it's like one of the biggest factions in New Japan. It's one of the biggest factions in CMLL, and he was like a founding member of that. And a lot of that came from just how good he was a mass wrestler.
I saw his highlights. I've never seen his matches. Yeah. I saw his highlights, and he's got moves. I mean, he's definitely got moves. I saw the rope arm breaker, like a bunch of stuff that is unique. I mean, he was great even before he came to NXT, and then of course they wanted to have him be less of a lucha libre guy, more of a WWE guy, but he was really he's got the NXT, like a power guy. Yeah,
and but he was a Heyman guy, so he was the guy when Heyman was in charge of Raw. He was one of the guys that, like Aleister Black and Ricochet, that Heyman targeted right off as we need to push this guy. We need to make him a face of the brand. They put the U.S. title on him, and he defended it a bunch of times at a bunch of pay-per-views and getting pushed. And then Heyman got taken off. Somebody else, some other creative took over, and a bunch of the Heyman guy. He was like him and Aleister Black and Ricochet and Humberto Carrillo. Yeah, they all just vanished, and he was in a great act.
Well, Aleister Black vanished because they cut him. So
he was in a great act with Zelina Vega, where she was his manager, and that was great. It was fantastic. I saw them do their stuff at a house show in Houston, and up close.
And isn't it that Zelina's married to Aleister Black?
That's right.
He's married to Charlotte Flair.
He's engaged to Charlotte Flair. I don't think they've actually gotten married yet, but yeah, it seems to be coming. Yeah, he's a big so don't know how or why they couldn't pull the trigger on him in WWE, but it's a big deal. I think you had mentioned to me in a text before this that it made a lot more sense if he had been the mystery guy at Double or Nothing.
That's what I was telling you.
Leo Rush.
I'm not that Leo Rush seemed good for his short-lived wrestling career, but like this, I'm assuming that Andrade wasn't signed before the
it's either that, or do you want to have him come out and not win when you're going to do big things with him? Because if he's the mystery guy, then it feels like you would have to put him over, which means you don't get to do.
Yeah, you'd have to basically Brian Keith a little bit, right? Yeah.
So in that sense, this makes a little bit more sense, but it does, and it is like you can still say, okay, yes, we did a lot of big things at the pay-per-view, but there are still big things in the show after that. So it's not like the end of big things. So they can show like right away, right on Dynamite, like that's not the end of the new people coming. Here's Andrade. And,
right. I think we're going to get a lot more people coming.
It does feel like it. They said that they're going to, especially with Rampage coming, they're going to be expanding their roster. So we've been seeing a lot of guys on Dark for the last year. A lot of them look like they're starting to get ready for stuff to move up. But obviously, there's a lot of really talented people out there floating around in the market.
So I'm excited for Andrade. I think it's going to be. I wasn't a big I never really watched him before, but I've seen enough of him independently to know that I think it's going to be good for AEW. And I feel like
they've already
used Miro correctly, from over there. So I feel like they can do something with Andrade.
They know how to do that. Well, we are going to get a sneak peek of that because they were even before he showed up tonight. He's already signed to do the main event at Triple Mania, which is AAA's largest pay-per-view of the year every year. He's going to be in the main event, wrestling against Kenny Omega for the AAA Mega Championship.
Andrade versus Omega.
So I think that match. So everybody tune in to Triple Mania this year because I think that is going to be a preview.
Wait, so it's for the title, right? I'm assuming
it's for the AAA title.
But for the AAA title, so either way, that AAA guy is going to be on AEW.
Yes. Either way, whoever wins, the AAA champion will be on AEW.
All right.
Well, Conan just
showed
up
on. Going to show up on Dynamite.
Conan just showed up on the pay-per-view, so you got to figure that the ties between AAA and AEW are very tight. But I think that would be like a great preview of, and it could go either way. It could go either way, whoever wins. But I think that would be a great preview of what to expect from Andrade in May, because he's a guy like Pac. I expect expect to see him in main event matches most of the time doing just amazing stuff.
Yeah. So if anybody wants to get a sneak preview of that, I guess stay tuned for that AAA match and for AAA Mania, and then we can see what he's going to be like.
Yeah.
So I guess what did they have next? The Factory Family. You can talk about the Factory Family feud. I just wanted to go away. So
anything that gets more Lee Johnson, more screen time on Dynamite, I'm all for. And I'm actually a big fan of Anthony Ogogo. I see a lot of star potential in him. I think he'd probably be a better star as a babyface than a heel, but I think it's a good idea to go. They're doing the have him be a heel for a while, but the type of heel that when he turns babyface, gets a lot. And I think it's going to work for him. I think that's definitely
people want a reason to cheer for you. That's the thing. They're going to just cheer for you because against the bad guy, right? So it's easier to get heat than it is to get pops,
right? Yeah. And I think that's what they're going for with him, and I think that's the way to go for things with him, and I think it's going to work long term. But so anything to get, and that's what this is all about. And so that means you got to kind of deal with, I don't know why people give QT such a hard time. I like QT too, but that's why you're getting all this QT and Cody stuff. You got to go through that so we can get Anthony Ogogo. But so what do we have? We had continue, even though you had Cody get a definitive win over Anthony Ogogo at the pay-per-view.
Like it should have been really.
Should be the end of the feud. It is merely just the next step as we go directly from
continuation
that into a tag match, which really this tag match should have happened before the pay-per-view, not after, but whatever.
Right, exactly.
Which was all about leading up to got some really good time from Lee Johnson, although a couple of his spots didn't quite work out, but that's okay. That's why you're putting them on TV, so they can get more and more used to that. But it was all leading up to Cody getting QT set up for the Crossroads when Anthony Ogogo comes out of nowhere, hits him in the face, knocks him right out so that QT can get the pin. But then Ogogo stands right in the ring, right next to both of them, in full view of the referee. And the referee's going, Cody is knocked out with QT pinning him, but QT's partner is standing right here in the ring. I wonder if anything untoward happened while my back was turned. I can't figure it out. No one can.
Their tag team psychology is a little off sometimes, man, and that's.
I think that one I would just chalk up to a lack of experience. Like if he was a bit more experienced, it would have. He knew what the next spot was, so he's just standing there waiting for it because his bit was done. If he was a bit more experienced, he would have had the immediate intuition that I've done my spot. I need to get out of the ring now, but he didn't.
Exactly.
And they've got a show to do, so. People put a lot of this on the referee, and some of it's there, but the referee can't stop and lecture people every time because the show has to go on,
right?
Especially with the number of different segments they have every week. So he's just got to get going with it. Although
Last
they
time I
did
tried to elect
have
somebody as a referee in a wrestling match, I got beat the fuck up. So yeah, I get it.
they did have a great bit on the BT last week of we were talking about just how egregious the Young Bucks Double or Nothing match was in that regard, and they did have a really good bit where the Young Bucks are at the airport and they leave a giant wad of cash on the railing, and then they turn their backs and the referee kind of comes over and snags it and walks off.
Okay,
But
little hush
yeah,
hush the
I
deal.
don't know.
Yeah.
There will probably never come a day.
Little buy
when
yourself
stuff,
something nice. Yeah.
There will probably never come a day when we can say, hey, that there was not a single time where the referee was staring directly at some cheating or shenanigans in the AEW ring. And
well, if it's Audrey Edwards, she'd like backslap and backhand or something like that. So.
But that was that, and the feud will continue. We were now almost certainly looking forward towards. I mean, it did actually continue into the main event, but we're still almost certainly looking towards some more QT and Cody and Anthony Go-Go. But that's all right. Like I said, anything that gets more of the factory suit guys onto TV.
Yeah, that's great. That's wonderful. We all want to see that so much.
But then we also had leading into the next feud, and I'm of mixed feelings about that.
This also continues the theme of continuation.
And
I hate to say this, but I mean, basically, what happened is that the Inner Circle came out right and said that they were continuing this feud. Yeah, like it's over.
Just because we beat you in Stadium
Stampede, down into more granular levels, and we're going to go singles and tags, which is fine.
But it's what they should have done first. I mean, I know that they didn't have a lot of time. And that they really wanted
to care about them as a faction.
Well, they really wanted to do, for what better or worse, they really wanted to do Blood and Guts, and they really wanted to do it before Stadium Stampede. Oh, fine. There's lots of. They probably could not have done Blood and Guts at the pay-per-view if they were going to do it in Daly's place. There's no way to set up their cage. They would have had to do it somewhere else, which would have been tough to impossible, and no one would have liked it. And you wouldn't want Blood and Guts to follow Stadium Stampede. So in some ways, it's a no-win situation. But so now they're stuck in this. But for better or worse,
I'm just I love everybody involved, but I'm kind of tired of this feud.
Well, they're stuck in this situation. They've had the blow off, and now they're going to go and do the lead up to the blow off, because the individual matches should be the lead up to Stadium Stampede and Blood and Guts, not the other way around.
That makes the most sense booking wise to me. Yeah.
And some of it maybe they're like, well, we don't have if we
and the promos are getting a little stale. I mean, they're getting to be the same thing over and over again.
Now that being said, all the matches they're talking about, I want to see. I badly want to see Santana and Ortiz versus FTR is going to be a fantastic match.
Of course, the tag matches are going to be great.
I think some people,
of course, is going to be great.
Some people were snarking at it, but I actually think Jake Hagar versus Wardlow in an MMA cage is probably going to be a lot of fun.
They have good chemistry against each other.
They have really good chemistry. And I think Sammy versus Sean Spears is going to be fun. I know not everybody likes Sean Spears as much as I do. I think
I like Sean Spears a lot, actually. I'm a big Sean Spears mark.
Yeah. So I don't know what they're going to do I guess that means the actual blow off is going to be Jericho versus MJF. I don't know what they're going to do for that, but I guess
I hope it's an actual. Because and that's another thing is because Jericho actually has been getting. It's funny to say that Jericho hasn't been that good in the ring, but he's definitely been better in the ring recently. Yeah. Whenever he's had ring matches versus when AEW first
he was started. Very well. He was good. I mean, he definitely
got in shape first of all. I mean,
he definitely protected himself. He didn't do anything more than he could do, but you could tell he made sure things went all out for his big pay-per-view matches. Like the first Double or Nothing one with Kenny Omega wasn't as good as their first match, but he worked really hard at the All Out match with Adam Page. He worked really hard at the match with Cody. Like his pay-per-view matches, he worked really. And there were a handful of really good Dynamite match. Like he worked really hard with the Scorpio Sky match and the Jungle Boy match. The things where he was trying to really put over a story or a feud or a person.
Yeah, I mean he's so good at putting people over. I mean that's what he's there to do, and it works because he's Jericho. I mean he's fucking Jericho, right? Yeah. I mean when you lose, it doesn't matter. Exactly. You got to see Jericho wrestle. I mean,
not everything. I think there was some stuff. He was doing the Orange Cassidy matches and some of the MJF matches, and he was maybe leaning on some other things. But this last couple, ever since Revolution, I thought his, the tag match was a lot better than other people did at Revolution. But he's been working really hard.
We need to see MJF wrestle more. And that's why I'm looking forward to them just being in the ring maybe 3 times a month. Is that too much to ask for them to do? Because it feels like
he's wrestled a lot. I think the main thing is that because he always wrestles on a pay-per-view, so we tend to, but it's easy.
Does he have to do that? Why
he doesn't do TV very much. Well, it feels like they save it for the pay-per-view, so it's special. But as a result, he doesn't do it on TV as much. But look at some of like the big matches he had just last year. He had a great pay-per-view match with Cody.
He has great
pay-per-view match with Jungle Boy.
Yeah.
He had a pay-per-view match for the world title with John Moxley. He had a great pay-per-view match.
And that was great, I mean, if he wasn't great at those matches, I wouldn't be talking like this, right? Yeah. I want to see him do that shit more. That's basically what it comes down to. And so
I guess they have to.
It's going to continue like they're doing, which obviously they're doing. Yeah. I just would like for them to actually be wrestling more.
Well, it seems like they look at it, they're like, we have X amount of time. You can either talk or you can wrestle. We have a lot of guys who can wrestle well, in a given episode.
He's done promos in wrestling matches
on a given month, on a given week. But it's like we have X number of guys. We have a lot of guys who can wrestle really well, but we only have X number of people who can talk really well. So we're going to have the talkers, not all the time, but a lot of the time we're going to have the talkers talk so that we have someone who can talk. Because that's, very much the same thing, because right after this is the Britt Baker celebration for her victory as the new women's champion, and it's all
actually that was a little bit later in the show, because before that they had the Kenny Omega conspiracy angle, remember?
Right.
Which I don't know. Are they actually doing that?
I don't know what we'll find out.
I don't think that's a great angle.
If they were really smart, they would tie it over a bit to the stuff he's doing in Impact, but they're really keeping those things very separate. But
so they went over that, and then they had the Jungle Boy Christian tag match, which really, let's be honest, it was mostly about extending the Christian Matt Hardy feud.
I think it was two things, because
putting over Jungle Boy,
it was really about putting over Jungle Boy, because they gave Jungle Boy everything, and a lot of this was Christian was making Jungle Boy look like a hero, and they were setting everything up so he could come in and have the big heroic thing, and Private Party was actually really good at doing that. And they're trying to find stuff to do with Christian, because I think obviously his feud was going to be.
Well, I think Christian Hardy is going to be a good feud. I mean,
I don't think it was what they were
tried and true feud, right?
Exactly. I mean, God. You know what? Somebody mentioned today that since 2003, Matt Hardy and Christian Cage have been in 2 singles matches against each other, and that is it.
But how many tag matches?
And nobody knows. There's no time. And I also think that this isn't necessarily what they were going to do with him to begin with. I think he was going to be in a feud with Team Taz, and now that has and Ricky Starks, and that has been sidelined. So I think they're kind of coming up with things for him. Yeah, the implosion and Starks being hurt, so they are coming up with things on the fly for Christian Cage to do, which is fine. Yeah, and this was really good, and it made Jungle Boy look really good, and. Private Parties actually, they are better as faces than they are kind of bland as heels. I think they just they're not natural heels. And
they're not.
A little bit too much
they're
like
not. Even their entrance is a party, you come in like, who goes to a party to have a bad time, right? Yeah. I mean, they're good time fun people.
Yeah, it feels like it's like reverse Randy Orton as a babyface. It feels like they're playing a role, and they don't believe in it, and nobody else believes in it. So at some point, the sooner that they can. And
another thing is, like, it's hard to be, like I said, it's easier to get heat than it is to get pops. And so when you just naturally get pops, it seems like that's something you can milk rather than like, hey, just for fuck's sake, let's put them as heels. But I mean, they're young and they're so talented enough that they can. I mean, I don't think they're going to stay heels for a long time. If in 20 years' time, I think we're going to say majority of their career they were faces. Yeah, but And then they had the Sky Page. Sting again, continuation.
You got to keep it going. Well, they're moving it around. So they had like the good thing with Sting, and now they're going to. Well, there were 2 things here, because they're going to obviously continue this with Darby Allin, but without Sting, so that they can continue to have something for everybody to do, which is fine, because anything that gets Scorpio Sky and Ethan Page on TV, I'm happy about.
And gets Darby on TV.
And gets Darby on TV, especially now that he's not champion, and now that he has to have another partner. They can grab someone who's not getting a lot of TV time, and put him into that spot, and they can have something to do. That is what I've heard, but like Lance has plenty of stuff to do on his own. They should get. I mean, you can put Lance into anything. Yeah, but that's all right. Crush people on Dark, but that's okay. I mean, yeah, especially when you consider Lance as a top guy that they want to keep on TV, it makes it.
And it would be the continuation of the whole Sting weirdness.
Exactly. But I would almost like to see someone who is really good. I'm trying to think of someone who fits this bill, like someone who's really good who just hasn't been able to be on TV because they don't have anything to do with them.
Oh, Ryzen. There we go.
You and your thing. I would rather not anybody but Ryzen, but I know that you have. Oh, like Sean Dean. Sean Dean's another great guy who just doesn't get any time, and they haven't had anything to do with him. Captain Sean Dean.
He's got to win a couple matches first, right?
Well, this is the time for him to do that. But it's not. It's probably going to be Lance Archer, which is fine. I mean, because they need to put the big names on Dynamite, but that's fine.
Plus, there's no real big small guy team on Dynamite.
That's true. Well, one thing so that segment ended really weird. I assume that like something went overtime, and so they ended up having to go to commercial earlier than they expected.
I don't think I noticed that.
Darby is standing in the ring looking like he's getting ready to reply, and then it just goes to commercial. He doesn't get to say anything. He posted on his timeline later that what he was going to say is that he thought he and Sting should go and challenge for the tag team titles. And I actually I'd find that interesting.
Darby they're just rotating people with the next man up thing, so why not at this point?
Darby Allin and Sting versus the Young Bucks, I could see that. And that's something, it brings a little bit of freshness to the tag team title. And it's one of the things I like best because we've seen it with Moxley and Kingston, that they actually keep that tag team title on par with the world title.
Oh yeah, no, it's
if you win one, it's like, all right, I'm having some trouble with the world title picture. I'm going to go after the tag team title picture. It's just as prestigious. It's just as hard to get, if not harder. The matches are just as good.
I mean, that's basically the trademark of AEW is their emphasis on tag team wrestling.
Yeah, so that it's on par with anything else in the company, or at least on par with the world championship. The TNT and women's sort of depends on who's holding them at any given time.
So speaking of women's, then we went into the DMD.
That's right. Which is one of those things I wanted to bring. I guess I was leading to it from the MJF because she's another one of those. She actually does wrestle more than MJF.
Oh,
not. Yeah, she does because she will go on dark. But
yeah,
even though those tend to be like 2 or 3 minutes while she crushes someone real quick.
Sure, but at least
they're spending a lot, especially on Dynamite. They spend much. She does wrestle on Dynamite more than MJF too, but they spend most of her time. She needs the ring.
Most people wrestle more than MJF,
but who are in the main event spot anyway. But they also have her talk a lot because she can't, because she's over as a heel and she can talk really well. So they're like, well, we're not gonna have her spending a bunch of time in the ring because we need someone in the women's division who can talk.
Although I still feel like they're making her heel, but she's still getting tweeny reactions a little bit.
It's gonna be tough.
This Nyla feud. First of all, why was Nyla Rose at that celebration? That's what I didn't get.
Because she doesn't because she wants to think. It makes sense to me. It's actually a continuation.
No other women's wrestler was there. It was just her.
Well, I know there were some. You just couldn't see them because she's so much bigger than everybody else. But they've done these heel versus heel things before, and they've done with Nyla before.
I mean,
yeah. Well, and Nyla's a good challenger because she wrestled against Sheeta twice at 2 different pay-per-views.
She's good in the ring.
Most dominant challenger for the. If your women's challenger can beat Nyla, then it can be seen as legitimate and holding on to something.
Yeah.
And they're not afraid to do the heel versus heel, which is good. Like Nyla, when she was champion, was supposed to start a heel versus heel feud with Bea Priestley. And then the pandemic shut everything down, and they couldn't do that.
Oh, I forgot about Bea Priestley. That's right.
That was like the very last thing they did before the shutdown. And then Bea Priestley got stuck in Japan, and they couldn't do anything about else with it, which is unfortunate. So, and then Nyla ended up having to just drop the title.
Yeah, I think Nyla DMD will be a very good feud. It was just kind of funny that again, I was just like, why are her and Vicky there? Like, why would you want them there? What was the hamburger thing? That was kind of like
that's one of those things that. Yeah, it's one of those things that hasn't even been on TV or dark. So unless you're following everything very closely, especially with social media, it makes no sense. But apparently Britt Baker had been making a lot of subtle comments about Wendy's and claiming that she was a Big Mac girl. And because the Wendy's Twitter,
I guess I don't need beef.
It's weird. The Wendy's Twitter feed, the Wendy's actual corporate Twitter feed tweets at wrestlers all the time. It's a very strange.
No, they're pretty. I didn't know they did that. I know they're pretty funny.
They are funny. They tweet at wrestlers at About Wrestling a lot.
And they're not
the ones that they got was. when they in our stomachs all appreciate that. The one they got was actually I like because I like Arby's, but
Arby's. They're a good punchline though, but I like.
But they are good. But Jon Stewart has turned them into such a great punchline.
Big
but they were Wendy's tweeted something at Britt Baker, and she insisted that no, she was a McDonald's girl, only Big Macs, and that it led through several things to
smorgasbord of hamburgers.
She was basically requesting before Double or Nothing that if she won, she expected McDonald's to give her weight in hamburgers, which led to the 15,000.
I still don't know. Like, it doesn't connect with me at all. Even though, like, I can't buy it happening now.
I almost want to take back. I almost want to take back what I said before about having to watch Dark and Elevation to see the goofy stuff, because a lot of the goofy stuff really does make it onto Dynamite.
Right,
not as much. You're not ever going to get like the full wing.
The goofy stuff,
but you know what? This is what I love about it. It's what I enjoy it. It's not just soap. I mean, you love the.
It doesn't take itself too seriously.
Lines, but the goofy stuff is what I mean. And sometimes it's real. I legitimately got upset about Sue's car getting destroyed during the Best Friends Proud and Proud feud. I was like,
that feud was so good, man.
And it was and people complain, but I also I laughed at it. It was great. I laughed at it while simultaneously going, that is purely evil. But I'm laughing at the ridiculousness of it in a wrestling show as well. And it worked. And
Sue's mom Sue's pretty over. So
Sue is over.
Yeah.
Sue is over. And we got two people will make a note of this. We got 2 women's segments this week as well, because not only did we get the Britt Baker one, but we had the storyline that didn't quite begin, but had its major element in Elevation this week. Wrapped up, maybe wrapped up. Who knows? Maybe it continues. I don't know. But seemed to wrap up in on Dynamite with Red Velvet versus the Bunny to make up for the Bunny cheating in their tag match on Elevation.
I like that feud a lot.
And I'm surprised.
I like both wrestlers a lot.
I like them both a lot.
Velvet, and I'm a huge fan of the Bunny.
Bunny went through a long period where she was not getting on Dynamite at all, and now.
Oh, Bunny's like actually been a women's title holder, right? Like outside of other promotions and stuff.
Yeah, I've heard that promotion she has, and there was a long period where she was getting sidelined, which was too bad. But the last year or so, they've been finding a lot of stuff for her to do, and this was a good one, especially heel Bunny. I mean, some of the stuff with QT wasn't great, but heel Bunny with the Hardy family office is really good. She's a good opponent for Velvet. You don't want Velvet getting beat by Jade Cargill every week, so it's good to have Red Velvet have a good. I
didn't even realize that. So Jade wasn't even on this show, was she?
She was on Elevation this week.
Right, but not on Dynamite. She came out. She came out to beat somebody and on Elevate, and it looks like she's going to be on this Friday, I think. But yeah, I mean they have to cycle, and the thing I like, it's Red Velvet. They're moving on with it. They're not just. She wasn't just brought up to be fed to Jade Cargill. They're like, all right. She's had that stuff. We're going to keep going. We're going to find more matches, even though I'm amazed she came out of this match alive, because that was one of the. I've seen one nastier suicide dive in the last week than that one. There was a dark match with Billy Gunn where Billy legitimately stepped out of a guy's way and refused to catch him and actually swatted him on the floor. I couldn't tell. I still can't tell if he was mad, if that was the spot that they planned, or if he was mad at the guy. It's like a version of sandbagging almost.
But I was the guy looked like he went head first into the guardrail.
Yeesh.
And it was gnarly. I'm like, is anybody mad at him for that? Because I would
say some type of justice or what.
This wasn't that bad, but it was pretty bad. It looked like she landed on her face and then rolled completely over on her face, and then she got right back up, like it was nothing.
Her face looked fine.
And there's no bruises or laceration. If you didn't know that if you hadn't just watched her do that, you probably wouldn't have known she just done that. And it probably, after the adrenaline went away, it probably hurt a lot in the back. But that was
as they tend to do. Yeah.
That was crazy.
Yeah.
And I don't always want to sound like the old guy. And you hear JR say a lot of commentary, like, why are they doing dives in every match? Maybe they shouldn't do.
Tope suicida. Tope suicida. I'm like, the same guy through the ropes, man. It sounds crazy when you just keep saying Tope Suicida over and over again. But then again,
but you know what? They've gotten it over, and I know what it means now. Didn't know what it meant before I started watching Dynamite, but I know what it is now.
Oh yeah, no, I never heard that. People just used to say down outside the ropes, even like when you're in like the aforementioned video games, and you program the moves in. It's not called a Tope Suicida. Right. It's called a dive off the ropes thing.
What's something else that's stuck in my head? As much as JR yells about that stuff, there's a period in the mid 90s where they were bringing a lot of AAA guys to WWF and letting them wrestle lucha libre matches in the middle of shows just because they were desperate and trying everything. And JR is the only person who knows what's going on. He's saying plancha, Tope Suicida.
No, he knows.
He's covering every single
move. What happened at WWE was there was a creative decision to stop being like that, right? Yeah. And I think that he just got out of practice of doing that, really. Yeah.
But it was weird seeing young JR where he is obviously the only person on the creative team who's ever watched Lucha Libre who knows who any of these guys are or knows what any of their matches, their moves are. And here on AEW, it's 100% the other way around.
Right.
Not 100% because
also a lot older
he
now,
knows
right?
He knows what this stuff is, and he knows who the Lucha Brothers are and all that. He's called a lot of their matches before, but he gets to play the crusty old guy to Excalibur, which is fine.
There was one I can't remember, but he messed up somebody's name this week. Oh, it was Andrade. He couldn't say Andrade's name.
He couldn't say
Andrade
Idolo. Idolo. Yeah.
Idolo. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that was apparently hard. The only person who could get it was Excalibur. That one was apparently hard.
Tope Suicida.
But that's fine. We will see a bunch of those, I'm sure, and some rope walks and a few other things. And I believe that actually brings us to the other Rhodes match and the other part of the Nightmare Family feud.
The main event.
The main event. the bull rope match.
Yeah. Which whatever. People got bloody. I saw and.
I was expecting more out of it. I know Camarado's a new guy, and he needs he needs more seasoning, but he's got a lot of size, and that is something that AEW could really use. And him
and Lee Johnson just need to not be in this feud. They need to be doing their own thing somewhere, away from this factory family bullshit, man.
Well, they just don't have anyone for him to. They just don't have anyone for him to wrestle, and he doesn't like Lee Johnson. He's got personality. They can probably set him up with someone else. For whatever reason, they're not doing that yet. Camarado, I don't know. I haven't ever heard him talk.
Why don't you just have him fight Griff
I don't know if he's going to. Terrible. Hey, the one thing I did, the other thing you really got from Elevation this week is the Varsity Blondes are over. When they come out and they do their full thing and Julia Hart does her cheerleader thing, people are yelling and screaming their heads off.
I'm okay with Brian Pillman. I don't mind Julia Hart. Griff Garrison bores the hell out of me. And
he's definitely.
I just find him very boring.
He's growing on me. He's definitely my third favorite out of the group, but he's growing on me. And as a tag team, I like them. But we'll talk about that more next week because they had a bunch of stuff on Elevation next week. But I was hoping for more out of the bull rope match. Because they'd had that bunkhouse match that he and QT had with Butcher and Blade several months ago. I thought was really good. It was another one of those that some people thought it came out of nowhere, but
from what I remember, that match
was really
awesome in that match.
Blade was really, and maybe it comes down to who the opponent was and the fact it was a tag match, so people could do different things. But you had people getting juiced with that bolt with the cowbell. You had the giant ladder elbow off the ladder drop, and Blade was really, really good. And Blade's really good, and he unfortunately is hurt.
And he had the iconic picture from that match. He doesn't have that here.
They didn't have that here.
It sucks.
Dustin is. You got to put the young guys over, and that means sometimes stuff will happen before people are ready. But they need to do it. But Dustin's definitely carrying Nick through a bunch of this, and they tried hard. It got to a point where JR was definitely just tired of putting. He's like, I'm not gonna put this over. This is.
I was clock watching by this match. I was like, all right, can we fast forward any of this?
It's not one of their best ones. It is not the worst match ever on Dynamite by a mile. That is still, and probably will always be, the handicap match. No, the handicap match between Big Swole and Rebel and Britt Baker and LB4. I don't know if they will hopefully never have a match ever.
Yeah, that's infamous in wrestling circles.
Yeah. I don't know if it's even their worst main event. I'm sure I feel that they have probably had a worse main event that had just a lot of bullshit in it. Because they have done that sort of thing.
Because even like the Mox,
it was fun.
With Mox handing match with the ending that didn't work out.
The
rest of the match was great.
Well, you had I think there was that. It's not really a main event, but you did have that thing with Mox and JF's lawyer that was pretty bad. That was really bad.
Oh, that was a main event though.
It was it was a match in a ring, and it was the
I mean, a
match
wrestler
on
against
the
a non-wrestler.
show.
Well, I guess that's what the Rebel match was too, right?
Yeah.
Hey, at least Rebel lost the fucking crutch though. We did see
finally.
That.
Well, Britt Baker's
won,
so they got rid of
like
it.
she's got to lose that damn crutch because
Yeah.
it just makes no sense. And she didn't bring it out for the celebration, so
thank God.
At least they're gonna put that.
So
and with the
I'm
wheelchair.
so tired of that.
Well, until they get injured again.
Yeah. But you know, it was unending, and we'll probably get better this week. They did have to push the Jungle Boy match off, so instead this week we're going to get Miro versus Evil Uno for the TNT title. And while a lot of people said that sounds really random, and it is, I actually think it's gonna be really good. Evil Uno is
Evil Uno is one of the most underrated wrestlers.
He is one of the most underrated wrestlers in the company. He's fantastic. He's hilarious, but he can also go. And Miro is just a killer.
Yeah.
And Miro has had like 3 different great promos on Twitter this week for that match. They should put all of them onto Dynamite. They better let him talk on Dynamite before the match, because his "I'm going to kill you" promos just keep getting better.
He's intense.
He's
a good actor. I mean, when he gets his stuff in, I think he's a good actor.
He's really good.
It's one of those things where I wouldn't mind him going on like a Goldbergian streak of like.
Oh, they should go all the way with him. They should try to let him run for the double championship and be the first.
Sure. Yeah, I'm absolutely. And he's very over. And like I said, my casual friends, like my friends are just casual fans. They love him. I mean, they think he's great.
I know some people felt like he was wasted in the Kip Sabian best friend stuff, but even like back to I thought a lot of that stuff was funny. I really like the Arcade Anarchy.
Place, right? They had other stories.
Well, even back like into November, like Tony Khan said, what they're doing now is what we're going to do with him. So nobody should have been surprised by this. They were always planning on it, and now that it's here, it's great. In we'll do a quick, because we're coming up on our time, but in like quick related news. So there's a big Impact pay-per-view this week where Kenny Omega,
Moose and Kenny, right?
Kenny Omega and Moose. There's going to be a special episode of Impact that's going on as we record this, that may be changing that to a 3-way with Sami Callihan, which I hope they don't do, because that will probably be much worse than a Moose Kenny Omega match.
Kenny just gets in 3-way matches.
Well, the only thing I can think is that that Impact wants to find some way to protect Moose so he doesn't have to eat a pin, because they really want to build him up, which they should, because he keeps getting better and better.
I don't watch Impact, but I would assume that Moose would take it from Kenny now, right? I mean, or is he not there yet?
He may not be there. Well, everybody
building Moose.
The general feeling, and I think it's probably right, is that Kenny's not going to lose any of his other belts till he loses the AEW belt. That Tony Khan's not going to sign off on him taking a pin, unless they got something really giant planned, that he's probably not going to sign off on that. He doesn't want his.
It makes the AEW belt that much stronger when he has all these, right? So yeah, that makes sense.
But Moose was the best part, or not the best part. He was one of the best parts of that first big 6-man tag where Kenny Omega went to Impact at the beginning. He was great in that. I suspect he could have a really, really good match with Kenny Omega, and I'm heavily looking forward to it. I would be looking forward to it less if they do in fact put Sami Callihan in it. I think that will weaken it, but we'll see what happens. Right. But also they had, and I don't know what this is going to mean for anything going forward, but they had the newest NWA pay-per-view was this past Saturday, and Serena Deeb lost the NWA championship to
Mickey James. Right, I saw that. And the Mickey Jameses are going to have an all-women pay-per-view.
Something like that. So it's something they've been clearly planning for a while. Camille is like.
I didn't know that she was married to Nick Aldis.
Yeah, for a long time. Yeah. But Camille is a homegrown talent at NWA. She's kind of like a Jade Cargill, but she's a little.
She's a champ now, right? She's the one that.
She's the champ. Yeah. So she's a giant bodybuilder, but they've been giving up. They've been giving her a lot of work, and she's been having. She spent like her first 2 years. Just basically being a valet for Nick Aldis. They took a long time. It was a year before she talked for the first time. They spent a long time making sure.
Oh, like a China thing?
Something, yes, very much like that. Okay. They spent she was at the first All Out, in fact. No, she wasn't. She was at the show right after that. But I'm sorry, the All In. But they've been building her up for a long time, and they finally put the belt on her. So that will be. She and Thunder Rosa had an amazing match. Right before the pay-per-view, where if Thunder Rosa lost, she could never wrestle in AEW again, and it went to a 20-minute time limit draw. So she's still allowed to come to AEW, but it seems like there's going to be more history there. Thunder Rosa got a really good match out of her. I don't know if anybody else is going to be able to, but I'm wondering, is that it for NWA material that we see on AEW? Is Camille going to come and show up on AEW to?
I mean, I don't see why they would stop the relationship now. It's really nice to see that NWA is back though. I never really watched it, but I know that enough of good talent has come out of there that it's good to have.
Well, so much of their good talent is now on AEW. It's some of it's on WWE.
Right? Yeah, Ricky Starks.
They don't have a lot of their depth is gone. Unfortunately, the people they have left. I mean, they've got Nick Aldis and they've got Thunder Rosa, and to a lesser extent, they've got Camille. And they don't have a huge amount. They've got Aaron Stevens, better known as Damian Sandow, who is
standout. Damian Sandow. Isn't Trevor Murdoch on there too?
Trevor Murdoch is on there.
And, he all comes out smelling something bad.
Yeah, he still is. He was just in the world title event. He was in the main event at the pay-per-view, in fact, which had one of the worst finishes of this year. So it wasn't good. But it's they don't have what they do. You know, the stuff they do. It's not quite that bad, but it was pretty bad. Nick Aldis intentionally DQ'd the ref to hit the ref to DQ himself to keep from losing the title. Yeah, it sucked. It really sucked really bad.
You turn off the TV.
Yeah, pretty much. You're like, I paid X dollars for that. But yeah, it's really weird in that Aaron Stevens is, for things outside of his control, has been put into the path of being a babyface, which is not like a natural fit for him, but he does it really well.
So he's pretty smarmy, so yeah.
Well, he's been a heel the whole time he's been in NWA, because that's his best fit, and that fits his gimmick really well. So that's what he's doing. But he was tag team partners with Question Mark, who tragically passed away, and so because of that, he kind of had to turn babyface because there was a lot of sympathy for him.
It's kind of like the Dark Order when
kind of like the Dark Order. Yeah. So he's still a babyface, and it's a very weird thing. So I don't know. It's a weird. They were really strong. NWA was doing great before the pandemic. Pandemic has hurt them worse than any of the other small outfits. I'd hope to keep seeing some of their guys show up on AEW and get them some attention, but we'll see. But
actually, so on that, because this leads to a question that I had. I think recently there was a story about how Nick Khan over WWE they're trying to pursue contract with independents, or at least NJPW, and I don't think they're stopping with NJPW. So do you think that's going to start to interfere with AEW's relationships with a bunch of those companies?
If any of it comes to pass, the question is it going to happen? Obviously, WWE has not ever really wanted to do that. It's very interesting that they're talking about wanting to do that now, but will anybody want to do it? Because it sounds like the NJPW one isn't going to happen. It sounds like
really?
Sounds like nobody knows, but it sounds like it's not going to happen. And which makes sense because it's not really in New Japan's best interest to do a long-term deal with New Japan.
I don't think it's really helped New Japan as much as people think
that would like hasten their demise. They said a lot of the same thing about Mexico, because apparently
it's like jumping the shark, right? Kind of.
Well, it's just that what WWE wants is to eventually be in those markets as WWE, and if you're their partner, they will eventually use that against you.
You're never their partner, though. That's the thing, right?
Yeah. Exactly. Because they've been talking with CMLL and AAA about going into Mexico and partnering with them, and people have been like warning them, like, don't do that. WWE wants to set up a Mexican branch and take over and push you guys out.
They're like a parasite.
You don't want to do that. That's exactly what they're like. So who knows? But Nick Khan is a different kind of boss than WWE's had.
No relation to Shotter, Tony.
Not at all. Just one of the just a coincidence. But he seems
has Khan on the contract. He works on their own contract.
He seems to want
contract.
Oh God, that might be the time when it starts going into pun time. It's probably time. It's probably time for us to cue the music. So, I think we're running out, but we got lots to pick up again after this week's Dynamite, which we will, which is not going to. That next episode will not take as long to get out as this one did. So until then, I'm Josh Starnes.
And I'm Shameek Josh.
And this has been All Elite Reviewing. Cue the music.